Oh, hi. My name's Sean Sanders. Welcome to my How to Write series. I am a writing teacher, an editor, and an author. You probably think you already know how to write. I mean, you made it this far, right? But my experience tells me that most people not only don't know how to write, they don't know that they don't know how to write. When I first went to college, I was, let's just say, a mature adult. I'd been out of school for 20 years or more. I enrolled in a writing class, English Comp 101. I got my first paper back, covered in red ink, fragmented sentence, comma splice, run-on, WTF, question mark. I didn't understand what this meant, and I went and asked the teacher, and she explained to me, well, you don't know how to use basic punctuation, you don't know how to use sentence structure. And I was quite surprised by this. In fact, I was horrified because I did a lot of reading when I was a kid, and I've always read a lot, and I thought I was fully literate. So it came as a shock to me to learn in my 40s that I had never known how to structure a basic sentence. I could guess, but that's not the same as knowing. So when I learned how to do the basics, the light bulb went on for me. And to be honest, it changed my life to know that I could become fully literate and really understand what that meant. And I learned that it wasn't that hard. So to find out if you know how to write, let me ask you this simple question. Where does a comma go in a sentence? Now, I don't mean lists. We all know lists, right? I went to the store, I bought eggs, comma, bread, comma, milk, blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about sentence structure. So think about it. Where does a comma go? If you said where you think there should be a pause, then I'm sorry to tell you that, like me, you were taught bad grammar in school. Does bad grammar matter? Do we really have to be good at this kind of thing? Well, let's see. Who cares about this? Well, religion. All religions are based on literacy. All our legal systems are based on literacy. Our entertainment industries are entirely based on literacy. Most of the communication that goes on in the technology industry is entirely based on literacy. So it seems like pretty much everyone cares about this. And if you don't know the basics, then you're at a disadvantage. And it's not your fault if you don't. Basic literacy has not been taught properly in public schools since 1960. I'll tell you more about that later. There was a reason why that has happened. But the basics are no longer taught. So as a college teacher, 90% of my students don't know basic punctuation. So if you don't know it, you're probably like them and you've been kind of guessing all this time and you've never really known. But the funny thing is about basic punctuation, the basics of grammar, they are not difficult. But neither are they easy. Easy is eating an ice cream, especially if you're lying on the beach on a hot day, right? That's easy. Watching a movie and eating popcorn with your pals, that's easy. But basic grammar, it's not difficult. It's simple, but you have to use it consistently. So in this series, I'm going to walk through the basics, show you how simple they are, and I'm going to encourage you to apply these basic principles to your writing every time you write. Because if you only do it once in a blue moon, it won't have much effect. But if you use these principles in your writing consistently, you will not only become a better writer, you will be able to communicate with people more clearly, and you will be able to edit your own work effectively because you will know what is on that page. In this series, I will try and keep the videos concise and to the point. Our attention spans seem to be around 10 minutes, so I might aim for that. That seems to be what my attention span is. But first off, I want to look at a couple of basic ideas behind literacy. If you don't know where a comma goes in a sentence, it is not your fault. I'm pretty sure you were never taught properly. However, there are expectations on our children at school when we're young, and I had those expectations placed on me, and you probably did too. the expectation goes like this. Everybody kind of knows how to write. If you don't know how to write, well, maybe you're not as smart as the other kids who do know how to write. The problem with this belief system is it's just not true. You have to be taught to write properly to be a good writer. So maybe some kids sort of fudged their way through and did a little better than others. But we are not hardwired for literacy, not in the way we seem to be for music or other art forms. It's not an ability we're born with. We have to learn it. So if we go back and look at human history, there are other forms of literacy. There are the visual arts, and archaeologists have found that we were cave artists, very accomplished cave artists, 30,000 years ago, maybe longer, 40,000 years ago. They have found bone flutes in fire pits that were left there. I'm not sure. So we have a long history of these arts. What is the oldest piece of writing you have heard of? Probably the Bible, right? And that's what? A couple of thousand years old? If we go back to about 3,500 years ago, we find our first examples of public literacy. Google King Hammurabi and Hammurabi's Code, and you'll see that there was a king in Mesopotamia who created laws that people had to read, and they were carved into stones around the perimeter of his kingdom. So that's not long ago compared to these other forms we've had. So we have religious scriptures, which are between 1,500 and 2,000, maybe 3,000 years old. But these are scriptures that were written or carved in clay or stone in very small volumes. People were not literate. So about 1450, somewhere in the middle of the 1400s, Gutenberg invented the printing press. So suddenly, instead of handwriting, we have a machine that we can create copies. And if you use that machine all day long, pulling on that big old lever, you can pop out, maybe a few hundred copies in a day of the same page. Then we have the modern printing press, of course, which has only been around for a few hundred years. And then we start to see mass literacy happening. And then maybe 150 to 200 years ago, we have schools for the first time. We have schools for the first time. And then there is an expectation that children should learn to read and write. So in terms of the human evolution that we've gone through, literacy, mass literacy as it is expected in our society today, is the last nanosecond of our experience. So there is absolutely no reason that a child should suddenly pick this up as if it were part of our DNA, because it's not. It has to be learned and it has to be taught. So once again, if you have struggled with writing, or if you've ever been told you are not a good writer when you were young, forget that. That's nonsense. This stuff is simple. You just have to practice it consistently and you'll get it. If I refer to my notes sometimes as I make this series, it's because I want to try and keep on track. I have a tendency to story tell. So when we try to assess how dependent we are on literacy in our modern society, and we look at religions and entertainment and legal systems and technology systems, it seems we're 100% dependent on them. In fact, I would go as far as saying that literacy is modern man's most powerful technology, the most powerful technology we've ever invented. If we did not have full literacy, we would not have any of the things you see around you today. It's record keeping, it's history, it's learning. Everything is based upon literacy. So we are in the biggest mass literacy event in human history right now. We have tweeting, we have the internet, we have emails, it goes on and on and on. Some people decry technology. They say this is terrible for writers, they're just tweeting. But the fact of the matter is we are all trying to communicate clearly through literacy skills. Now, literacy as I'm talking about it includes writing the written word on the page or the typed word on the page. Of course, we have language skills which go back millennia. There's no question there. We've had language skills for a very, very long time. It's what makes us human. But written on the page, that's a recent invention. For us to be able to do that empowers us. It gives us a voice. And to have a voice is very, very important. This video series is based loosely on my textbook, Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Writing, But Were Afraid to Ask. This textbook has emerged out of my 15 years of teaching experience, where I've worked at community colleges with entry-level students. Some of those students were struggling, clearly didn't do well in high school, and yet they're still expected to write in college. So sometimes they come in below college level, sometimes they come in, those students, and they're very high-level writers. So there's a whole range. In addition, I work with dissertation students, PhD students, and help them shape their work and help them edit their work. And I do speech writing, and I am an author. I have a couple of novels. Here's a quick pitch. 2 novels under my pen name, Ray Swift. They're both on Amazon. Check them out. Fantastic reading. But the course we're about to go through is based pretty much on this textbook that I use in my classes and that I developed over 15 years. We will look at the basics of sentence structure and basic grammatical forms. We will look at persuasive structure in an argument in an essay form, so that you can decide not only if you want to try writing one of those essays, but so that when you're in a debate with your pals about politics or whatever it is, you will communicate more clearly if you can structure that idea clearly on the page. And then at the end of the series, we will start looking at creative writing, and we will connect the dots between persuasive academic style and creative style for narrative. And you might be interested to see how closely connected those ideas are. So stick with me. I hope you enjoy this series. If you find you are enjoying this series, please consider subscribing to my channel, and maybe also consider donating through Patreon. The link is just below. I may be joined by my helper here. She helps me clear up the errors. She does a bit of proofreading for me and just keeps an eye on things. This is Uli, my little helper. What do you say? Learn to write. Yep. While I am not officially trained to work with disabled students or students with learning disabilities such as dyslexia, every teacher knows after a number of years how to identify those students and how best to help them. So I have found that the basic fundamentals in this book and in the coursework I do will reach students who are struggling with dyslexia and that kind of thing. Now, there are no guarantees for any of us. It's about applying the stuff consistently. And so, because it's clear and simple and direct, hopefully if you're dealing with dyslexia, this can help you as well.